Okay, we are now live on YouTube. So welcome everyone, all of those of you who are here on Zoom to follow this new edition of the EuroWeb Book Corner, and also to those who may be joining us on YouTube starting now. We are very happy to be together again for yet another installment of this feature of that we have come up with in the context of the Cost Action EuroWeb Europe to Textiles, in which we invite the authors or editors of recent publications on the textile field, textile archaeology, textile history, and etc., to present their newest publications. This is already our 8th installment. We hope to have a few more until the end of the year, so it's becoming quite an established tradition within EuroWeb, and we are very, very pleased today to have Audrey Gouy join the list of the colleagues who were kind enough to join us to present their works and their publications. We welcome Audrey today to talk to us about her recently edited volume on Textiles in Motion, Dress for Dance in the Ancient World, which is a fruit of her research projects on this very innovative and very frontier topic, which has always interested all of us so much, which as always captures our attention whenever she presents her work, because it is so interesting and innovative. Audrey is based in Lille, and she will be talking to us about this book, which is a multi-author book which she edited. I'm sure she will tell us a little bit about the origins of the book and the process of putting it together. Audrey, thank you very much for joining us. The floor is yours, and thank you again.
Thank you very much, Francisco, for this introduction and for inviting me. I am delighted to present this book to EuroWeb's community and beyond. So originally, this book was not supposed to be a book, but a conference that would have been held in June 2020 at the University of Oxford. But unfortunately, in June 2020, as you remember, we were in the middle of the containment of COVID-19. So I decided that instead of launching a call for conference papers, I launched a call for article proposals and to publish a book. This book, so I'm trying to, this book is a part of the Maris Sklodowska-Curie project, Textiles in Etruscan Dance, that was held at the Center for Textile Research, University of Copenhagen, Denmark, in partnership with the Archive of Performances of Greek and Roman Drama that is based at the Faculty of Classics, University of Oxford, UK, from September 2019 to August 2021. So this book was funded by this project, by the Maris Sklodowska-Curie actions. And the scope of this project, so you have here the website that I have created for the project. And the scope of this project was to study how textiles make us understand the movements of dance, their ritual functions, their diversity, their performativity, the ritual function of costumes in dance, and the social relations which intertwine. So for the first time, the relation between dance and textiles in Etruscan ritual practices was studied, as well as their handling. The Textiles project explored in depth the key role of dance in ancient ritual practices by focusing on its props, textiles in particular, and by producing new data from Etruria. And indeed, focusing on textiles allowed for the study of what is often ignored, the question of use. The various props used during dance were indeed communicative keys and constituted tools intended as both effective and multisensorial. They had an important impact on movements, as well as on the general direction and expression of dance, And so among those props, textiles in the form of garlands, tents, furniture, and dress were of primary importance. As said in the book, in introduction, dance in particular was at the core of dance. It adorned dancers, defined various roles, and formed symbolic expressions that, for example, either bound people together or opposed them. And as a key communicative tool, it gave important information to the understanding of dance, as well as the culture and the sociological dimensions of a group of people. So as such, dress transcends how it is seen visually to address what is being communicated. But studies in ancient dance have rarely taken clothing into considerations. In this regard, and while studies on ancient textiles have primarily focused on production and chaîne opératoire, consumption and value, economy and trade, or materiality and aesthetics, the aim of this Maris Skłodowska-Curie project and of this book is to really engage in the next steps in textile research and look towards new questioning, new knowledge, and inspiration. Given the importance and the variety of dress for dance that existed in the ancient world, a publication was needed to reveal its peculiarities. Also, focusing on dress for dance contributes to a better understanding of ancient dance as well, and allows the different interactions that occur during rituals to be understood from a different angle. In this regard, so the book gathers articles that give new perspectives and insights on ancient dance and their ancient textiles, comprehension of ancient dance benefits from investigations undertaken through the lens of dress, and research on ancient dress is understood through its relation to body movement and performative rituals, thus reinforcing the progressive integration of an anthropological and sociological dimension into a historical analysis of ancient textiles. And for the first time as well, the two-way transfer of knowledge between dance studies and costume studies is connected. Moreover, in this book, the various backgrounds of the different authors contribute to widen the discussion and the perspectives for future research. The chronological range of this publication is limited to the ancient world from 5000 BC to 5th century AD. And in order to maintain a cooperative approach to promote cross-cultural dialogue and to encourage and ensure discourse between fields and disciplines, this ancient world is intended as a broad geographical definition. As you can see here with the contents, the book is divided in 6 parts in order to question various aspects of dress for dance, such as movement design, sensory experience, gender and identity, representations, and modern reception. Part 1, that is entitled Practicalities, is thought as an introductory section that offers practical perspectives on dress specifically designed for motion and on how dance and dress affected each other. In this regard, the first chapter by Elizabeth Barber gives more insights on how the form of dress for dance and its function work tightly together. And because ancient clothing and dances have both been preserved very poorly, when at all, a practical assessment of their relationship in our current directly observable world is proposed by the author. More particularly, it considers how traditional dance, that the author calls folk dance, and apparel have affected each other in certain circumstances, in Hungary, for example, and in the Balkans. The question of how dance and costume have affected each other involves two very practical issues: how clothing and footwear affect the forms of the dancing, and how dance and its objectives influence clothing and footwear. The dance-related examples discussed in this chapter indicate four main sources of influence which run in both directions between dance and clothing. First, using apparel to affect the sound of the dance. Second, the enhancement or restriction of range and type of movement. Third, problems of fastening clothing and footwear for dancing. And fourth, the desire to show off or otherwise to send a specific message to the onlookers. Other sensory stimuli may be present and even manipulated during dance, such as light, color, smell, temperature, but these four observations offer a useful scaffold for studying the direct interplay of dance with costume in an all too evanescent past. Part 2, that is entitled Movement and Design, aims to present examples of dress specifically designed and arranged for movement. The structure of the dress is thought to respond to body motion. In this regard, the chapter by Ulrike Beck discusses some woolen skirts from Champula, Qingyuan, Western China, dating mostly from the first millennium BC and tailored from various fabrics. The examples taken in considerations are kept in the Abexstiefund, Switzerland, and based on a combination of textile craft and tapestry pictorial motifs. The skirts investigated in this chapter are designed to follow, expand, and magnify the body in motion. And indeed, for example, the hemlines are heavy, deep red woolen braids folded in hundreds of pleats. In total length, the hems measure more than 11 meters, so there is an enormous investment of fabric here. Scientific functional tests of the skirt designs reveal an unexpected result. The construction of the Champula skirts is explicitly designed for movements. The skirts float in slow undulation around the body and change direction with every step of their wearer, as you can see on the reconstruction here at right. Simultaneously, the textile waves flow steadily around the body and draw attention to the patterns on the tapestry. The author, by combining reverse engineering techniques with forensic studies and revealing the specific design of the Champula skirts, the article analyzes how the dress makers particularly draw their attention to the combination of material properties, textile technologies, concepts of colors and textures, while taking motion at the inherent parameter. While the chapter of Ulrike Beck is based on direct sources such as textile remains, the two following chapters show to what extent ancient literature and iconography can also be considered valuable sources for understanding movement and design of the dress. The first one, Elena Miramontes-Seyas, investigates the Bauchismos, a Greek dance from the Hellenistic period, presumably performed by women dressed in heavy and long veils. The author proposes to shed a new light on the sources available, and based on the literary sources, she focuses on how the Bauchismos and Ionian dances are described, as well as on the main features of the dance and the differences that are to be assumed between male and female dancers, taking dress as a direction. Based on the visual remains as well, the author investigates the types of dance and movements that are shown. Most of the dancers from those sources seem to be spinning with their clothes closely attached to their body, either because of the material used, which can be silk, sea silk, or thin linen, or because of the high speed of the whirling dance. Their veil determines their movement, avoiding the use of hands, which are occupied in manipulating the veil and other objects. But this also offers a specific image of the woman so heavily dressed in society. And finally, the author proposes also to question several aspects, such as the presence of both male and female dancers in the dance and the differences of movement and dress that it implied, the form of the dance, the use of dress, and its impact on the dancer's body and the dance. The following chapter by Evangelia Keramari explores one of the most known comedies of Menander, Theophorumene, which is also the only comedy of Menander where dance is attested and performed not by the chorus, but by the actors themselves. The author shed light on the dance movements that were ecstatic and the clothes worn by the characters. More particularly, she investigates the impact of dress on comedy and to what extent it gives it a meta-theatrical dimension at a very specific moment. Several questions run through her article, such as, how is dance depicted on the illustration of this Greek comedy? What are the clothes and the colors used for this purpose? What is the role of the costume in this theatrical dance? The youth involved in the dance seem to have worn chitons without belts, which allowed freedom of movement, unlike the usual costume of the comic actors. They also might have worn a long, narrow himation, like a scarf, which hung from their shoulders and twirled around, following the body movements. This type of ecstatic dance alludes to corybontic dance rituals, but it would not have been appropriate for young male citizens and girls to publicly dance them. So the actors seem to have made improvised costume by adding or changing garments such as loose himachons, scarves, garlands, over the usual comic attire in order to signify changes of role. This gave a meta-theatrical dimension to the comedy as the actors temporarily stepped out of their usual role and costume and freed their bodies and clothes with dance. Part 3, that is entitled Embodiment and Communication, focuses on the capacities of dress to express, incarnate, and personify. And indeed, dress in dance engages a powerful nonverbal communication. It exchanges and embodies various information. In this regard, the chapter of Leonidas Papadopoulos investigates ancient Greek tragedy where costume provides a provision of symbols with multiple socio-political, ideological, and aesthetic interpretations. And more specifically, Greek tragedians manipulated garment imagery in order to challenge the imagination and to stimulate the spectator's fantasies, of course, but also to generate a complex web of multidimensional symbolism, connotation, and dynamics. The particularly manipulated garment imagery when evoking images of otherness. In this regard, this chapter explores the attire of non-Greek choruses, its impact in the play, and to what extent it constituted polysemous communication. It analyzes how textiles and garments contributed to the conceptualization of the ethnic other, and in many cases challenged the definition of identity. In this regard, the source material for this chapter consists of a selection of plays where choral costumes represent the image of a mythic, ethnic, gendered, and faraway other. And more specifically, the article investigates the prominent role of costumes and their perception by studying the presence of barbarian choruses in Achilles' Persians and suppliant woman, as well as Euripides' Phoenician woman. The dynamic of costumes is also examined in Euripides' Trojan woman and Hecuba, where chorus appearance is not associated not only with their enslaved status, but also with their desire for revenge and protection. In the following article, Alexandra Sophroniou focuses on the Roman lares, twin youths wearing the same attire, a short tunic, a mantle knotted around the chest, and high boots. They are always depicted in motion, dancing, and her goal is to understand the meaning of the dress consistently worn by the lares, the information communicated in terms of identity and gender, and the impact of such figures in Roman religious practices, while the type of dance they refer to is usually not associated with such practices. The author reveals that the representation of the costumes of the lares accentuate the depiction of dance embodied by their pose. Moreover, despite the fact that they heighten the visualization of dance, the garments worn carry specific iconographic associations of Artemis, Diana, and are paralleled in Roman depictions of Kalatiscos dancers and other male and female dancers. And as such, they allow for an ambiguity of gender. Additional details such as clavi, tassel, or the bulla mark the elevated civic status of the lares and their Romanness. The chapter of Heidi Kopp-Jung discusses the earliest iconographical evidence in Egypt dated from 3000–1000 BC, the variations in dress practices for dance during this period, and the context in which they were used and worn. Already around 3000 BC, male and female dancers with clothing are shown in visual sources, wearing different aprons and various long dresses that sometimes seems to be clinging dresses, but from other scenes they appear cut wide to allow sweeping dance steps and a very agile dance style, whether for men or women. From the first millennium BC up to the middle of the second millennium BC, differences appear between male and female dancers that I questioned in the article and understood through the extent of erotism. Part 4 of this book, that is entitled Cognition and Sensory Experience, gathers chapters that investigate the sensory dimension of dress in dance. It focuses on aspects of dress that engage both the dancer and the spectator in a sensory process through smell, sound, touch, vision, and it explores the results, responses, and effects of such an experience. The chapter of Karina Grommer and Beata Maria Pomberger on sounding jewelry in Eastern Hallstatt culture explores the importance of sounds in dance. as highlighted by the two authors that I quote, dance attracts people not only visually, but also by sound, that of the music, but also by other sounds that are created by the person moving. And in Hallstatt culture, brooches with rattling pendants, as well as bells and other sounding artifacts, have been used as personal ornaments and were attached to garments, especially those of rich women. In the article, movements, dance, and sounds of the early Iron Age in Central Europe are discussed. And in an interdisciplinary approach, the authors focus attention on the interplay between rattling pendants and bells that have been attached to clothing, and thus on the acoustic codes of upper-class Iron Age women, and the extent to which the sound produced impacted the surrounding people. Ekaterini Iliana Rasia discussed the sensory experience in dance through dress during the ancient mystery cults in Greece. Based on iconography and literary sources, the author explores a specific moment of those mystery cults, which is the initiation, as well as the sensorial impact of dress, adornment, and movement. She especially investigates the sensorial impact of dress on dancers and to what extent the color coding of the dresses of the initiates in the mysteries facilitated or hindered their dance movements during the night. In this regard, it also questioned the importance of light, vision, touch, and sound, and to what extent it impacted the process of initiation as well as the dancers. Thus, the aim is threefold. First, to understand the sensorial impact of the flowing and ornamented dresses of the initiate women during their nuptial dancing. Second, if the color of their dresses and respective adornment facilitated their dancing in the artificial light of night. And if there are any archaeological and iconographical evidence that would enable us to reconstruct the site that the dresses and the adornment of the dancing initiates would have produced. And finally, in this part, the chapter by Gordon Galsitsky and Robin Price highlights the fact ancient Egyptian dance functioned within a ritual system that used sensory stimulation to facilitate interactions between humans, but also between humans and deities. In this regard, the smell, sound, and visual effects produced by the motion of dress in dance delineated a ritual space and made ancient dance particularly functional and transformative. And indeed, the authors suggest that it was the entire soundscape produced by dress in motion that made ancient Egyptian dance effective. Sweet smells exuded by whirling linen garments, the quiet tinkling of hollow beads, and the acrobatic movements of mostly nude bodies would only have been perceptible to nearby persons. Thus, these costume elements such as veiled nudity, perfumed linen, beaded girdles, and flamboyant hairstyles contributed to the bounding of a ritual space. It was the totality of the sensory attributes of the dress in motion that made dance effective as a transformative ritual. Part 5 of this book, that is entitled Images and Metaphors, gathers works on the visual representations and metaphors of textiles. And indeed, how much did images and metaphors of textiles through various kinds of representation inform us about dance and their dress? Angelia Belia investigates dance and musical performances that are represented on the dress worn by some female deities in the ancient world, and in particular in Sybaris, a Greek city in the West. It explores how these representations on cultic images are related to dancing and musical activities performed in the sacred sphere, providing us with information concerning body movements, sound, and aspects of rituals in the context of processions and festivals related to weaving activities. By combining archaeological data and writing sources, dance and music performances depicted on the dresses of female cult images seem to recall rituals performed in sacred spaces on the occasion of the epiphany of deities. The approach and the textile perspective contributes to enrich our understanding of ancient ritual performances in Magna Graecia. Finally, in this part, the article by Vittoria Rapisarda aims to look at clothing from a new perspective by focusing on textile-inspired tattoos worn by some dancers in ancient Egypt. And indeed, those tattoos seem to have replaced, on some occasions, the dress commonly used. Thus, the aim of this contribution is to understand the form and function of those textile-inspired tattoos, how they were involved in ritual performance, to what extent nudity contributed to free the dancers, and in the end, to understand how dress for dance and its decorative ornaments were perceived by Egyptian dancers. The investigation is based on iconographic sources, and indeed the Egyptian dancers were often immortalized in artistic representations, and they appear naked or partially dressed. As we can see here, you have two figures with possible tattoos around, so close to the feet and the wrist. The investigation is also based on mummies from Deir el-Bahari that display geometric lozenge-shaped tattoos on their body, showing strong stylistic similarities with the ornaments and textile decorations found on some of the dancers' dresses in iconography. The author also finds analogy with some real garments. In this paper, special consideration is also given to the position of the tattoos on the dancer's body. The author set out that the signs tattooed on their skin could have a twofold decorative and practical function. And finally, it is argued that tattoo was seen as a real dress of the skin. Finally, part 6 of this book, that is entitled Modern Reception, is dedicated to the latest discoveries in the modern reception of ancient dance and dress. It is difficult to talk about ancient dress and ancient dance without considering their modern reception. And indeed, beside famous figures such as Isadora Duncan or Loie Fuller, who based on the remains of ancient dance and dress, impacted and renewed dress practices in modern dance along with the movement. There are other decisive dancers and choreographers that are being rediscovered. And this contributes to shed new light on the reception of ancient dance by modern dancers. The chapter by Gerrit Berenike Heiter contributes to this rediscovery by analyzing the work and experiences of the German Swedish Saint Maheza, the French Nyota Inyoka, and the Czech Irena Lexova at the beginning of the 20th century. Those three figures transposed in their dances and costumes the knowledge they gathered from original ancient Egyptian artifacts And in doing so, they conceived unique choreographic creations in which a close relationship was established between gestures, movements, and costumes, and crucial importance was given to the visual impact of costumes. Questions on both identity and cultural representation regarding the individual situation of each of the three dancers are equally discussed in the article, and in a larger perspective of ambient Egyptomania, Saint Mahesa, Nyota Inyoka, and Irena Lexova impacted the wider European and American reception of ancient Egyptian dance and revealed primarily European imaginaries of this culture, its dance and costumes. So to conclude, this book highlights the fact that dress has always been at the core of dance. It adorns, it also complements, improves or restricts the movements. It definitely creates an experience for both the dancer and the viewer. The different sources from the ancient world, iconographical, archaeological, literary, also show the different strategies of communication that were at stake in dress during ancient dance. Dress defines various roles and forms symbolic expressions. It is a communicative tool that gives crucial information to understand the dance as well as the culture and the sociological effects of a group of people. And by focusing on specific key dimension of dress for dance, this book proposes a cross-disciplinary approach that aims at encouraging and answering discourse between fields and disciplines, as well as to promoting cross-cultural dialogue. The veil dancer from the Musée du Louvre in Paris that I place on the cover of this book is a wonderful example of the inherent meanings of dress during ancient dance and of the questions that are raised on the use and impact of dress in ancient dance and rituals. And indeed, we can see the veil unfolds and twirls around the body, leaving in space a fleeting impression of the female body. It covers and hides the body while revealing it at the same time, following the figure's different movements. The dress is conceived in a specific way that creates a dialogue with the dancer's body and gives information on the dance, but also on the figure's status, on the emotional and sensory experience of both the dancer and the viewer. I would like to express my gratitude and heartfelt thanks to CTR, the Center for Textile Research at the University of Copenhagen, Denmark, for welcoming and supporting my Marie Curie project between 2019 and 2021. I also express my gratitude and heartfelt thanks to the scientific committee of this book for their very kind help for the very kind and enlightening help during the editing process of the book. I must say as well that I really enjoyed working on this book. I learned a lot. I got inspired a lot. And I express also my gratitude and heartfelt thanks to all the authors of this book. It was wonderful and very inspiring to work with them all. And many thanks to EuroWeb as well for this platform and the opportunity to present the book. Finally, I would like to mention a quick information regarding the open access version of the book. So the hardback version has been published in April 2023, and an open access version of the book is planned and will be released in April 2024. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Audrey, for this really wonderful presentation and for putting together this really beautiful and inspiring book. which I think those of us who haven't read through it, I've read parts of it, but not read through it completely. I'm sure that everyone that hasn't read is now super curious to go and check out the book. So hopefully we will have the opportunity either now or when the open access version comes out. For the time being, I wanted to ask the colleagues joining us here on Zoom if they have any questions, any comments that they want to do about Audrey's presentation and about this volume and the topic. I'm also going to check if there are any questions on YouTube. I don't think so. Not at the moment. Well, if no one wants to take the floor first, I will just take this opportunity to ask you, Audrey, something that as I was listening to you and I was listening to the contents, to your survey of the contents of the different chapters, well, it really strikes me that this is truly a groundbreaking book in the sense that it approaches something that is not so much an established topic. And like you said in the beginning, with also in relation to your Textiles project, it really aims to open new vistas for research on textiles beyond production, beyond technology, and the other topics that have dominated this. And what I wanted to ask you is, on the topic of textiles and dance, textiles in motion, how do you see this topic developing further in the future? What are the perspectives that you think are open now that you've started exploring this topic? Is there some particular tools that you would like to see applied? Do you think that the future would be, at the moment, would be to accumulate more examples and more of a database of the study cases? Do you have any ideas on that?
Thank you very much, Francisco, for this question. Yes, indeed. So the question of future research is indeed important. I think that this book has been thought to really give inspiration and to be really the start of ideas for a lot of future research. So the floor is open for really everyone who is interested in textiles in motion and in ritual practices. In my case, I think that there's a lot to do regarding the sound of dress. There is the sensory dimension of dress that we have started to investigate now, so for some years, but that we really should deepen regarding dress for dance. And that actually my plan for the next months and years to particularly investigate the sound of dress in pre-Roman Italy, but also in Europe. And to collaborate with Karina Grommer and Beate Maria Pomberger on so at the Natural History Museum in Vienna, so on the sound of dress in Europe and in the Mediterranean. So yes, and then I hope that this book will inspire much more projects.
That's great. That's a great perspective. And I hope in that project about the sound of dress, we will also include Iberian Peninsula, and we can also look into interesting things that we can do together in the future.
Yes.
And let me just check here on the chat. I think we have mostly thanks from the audience and congratulations from Megan and others too.
Thank you for all your messages.
Yeah. Yes. And by the way, Leide, who was with us in Crete, she couldn't be in the session today because she's working, but she sends her regards too, and she says hi.
Okay.
So, if no one else wants to add anything at this point, are there any more questions or comments that anyone would like to make? If not, I don't want to keep Audrey any more than necessary. Thank you again very much. And just for all of you and for maybe people you know that weren't able to join us today for the session, Please note that that YouTube automatically records the streaming, so the streaming will be available to watch in the following few days on YouTube still. So all of those that couldn't join today will have a chance to listen to Audrey's wonderful talk. And with that, I think we can. No, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and for this really wonderful presentation. And thanks all of you for joining us here on and on YouTube too. And if that is all, goodbye from me, and I hope to see you in a future installment of our EuroWeb Book Corner. Audrey, thank you so much.